getting some great things done today, so let's go inside and check it out. We've had a couple of volunteers in over the last couple of days, and being mindful of social distancing, of course, they have gotten a lot done. Uncover those layers, and we're starting to see how this cabin was actually laid out back in the 1860s and 1870s. Notice the simple Greek Revival door with 2 vertical panels. This is another clue as to the age of this part of the Ray house. Greek Revival styling was prevalent in the U.S. from 1830 to 1860. There are 3 similar doors in this part of the cabin with that early design style. There's so many little clues about how the house was used and how it was laid out. For instance, we look at this chimney and we see that the mortar work is very, very poor. There was no attention to detail. It doesn't look like there was a lot of time taken to be sure that this would be presentable. When we go out and we look at the brick from the outside, you see that the mortar has all been cleaned up. It would have been an area that you would have been able to see. It was a part of the home that would have been exposed. So that's a small little clue that shows us how the home was laid out. We know that that little closet would have been there because the mortar hasn't been cleaned up. That mortar has not been taken care of. That attention to detail isn't there. This would be original to the home. I love the patina on this. It's a beautiful taupe gray. You can see that it was painted and there were shelves here at one point. This was a pantry, or it was in some way an area where they could keep some of their kitchen supplies and goods. To so many people, this just looks like junk. It just looks like an old piece of plaster. I see so much beauty in it. I think about the hands that were here, that were preparing meals, that were serving this home, and the people that lived in it. It's very inspiring to me to think about the ways in which this home was used and the hardships that everyone who was here went through. They had none of the conveniences that we have today. And so the lifestyle was very different, the hardships were very different. The day in and day out was sometimes a struggle. And it's so cool to see this little piece of the history that was here in the home. Admittedly, I'm a little bit of a geek about this stuff. I love historic preservation, and I think there's so much relevance for Schuyler County. I'm just like everyone else, and in some ways I'm just learning as I go. So many little details about pioneer life in central Illinois in the 1850s and 1860s. I had a really cool experience at home lately. We were burning some brush and taking out some old trees, and there was this really big old stump, had a whole bunch of clay in it. And my husband and I, made a big bonfire and burned it. And we came back a couple of days later, and there were chunks of brick in there. So you could see the way that clay had been fired and it had turned color. Learning a lot about bricks and the way that they were actually fired on site. So they were put into a mold on site, and then they were raked off. A clamp, or temporary kiln, fired the bricks on site. Schuyler County clay was routinely used for brick. The red color comes from the iron compounds in the naturally occurring clay soil. So I'm here with a few bricks, And I've learned.
As late as the 1880s, rural homes in central Illinois were routinely built with bricks manufactured at the construction site. Early brick makers were tolerant of more rocks in their clay, so when they struck the excess clay off the top of the mold, it would leave a divot in the top of the brick, as you see here.
So this is a handmade brick. A brick would have 6 sides, so there would be 5 smooth sides and 1 side that has the irregularities on it, because the other 5 sides were inside the mold. So these would have been handmade. Likely they would have been fired on site. So transportation was a huge issue. We think about that. If a lot of the foundations in our buildings of our historic homes were put into place, maybe at some of the earliest places here in Rushville were built between 1850 and 1870, there was really no rail service. 2 foundation types would have been impossible: stone foundation or brick foundation. With stone, there would have had to have been a natural resource there, close. A lot of the brick was fired on site. And here's another one. So this is So 5 smooth sides, 1 irregular side, and that essentially means that that's a handmade brick. I love learning about that. That's something that I've learned. If you know someone who knows more about brick and would like to share with us, we would love to hear their stories.